Welcome back to another episode of Divorce at Altitude. I am Ryan Kalamaya. This is a how-to episode on work-related daycare or childcare and how that can change or influence the amount of child support in Colorado, divorce or parenting dispute. So this is for working parents. If we take our hypothetical divorce clients, Eric and Melanie Wolf, they have children, and let's say that the children are at an age where they need to go to preschool or daycare. Or another example might be that both Eric and Melanie work and they have some sort of after school program or nanny that is required for the parties to work and generate income. How does that impact child support? If we go back to our previous episode in which I delve into the child support worksheet, and that's episode 207. The name of that episode is From Numbers to Answers, How to Tackle the Child Support Worksheet. Listeners will recall that I shared a screen on video and went through the child support worksheet. I basically narrated the various things that I did and the inputs. I'm going to do that same thing here. Again, I have the child support worksheet from Family Law Software, and I have our hypothetical divorce clients, Eric and Melanie Wolf. Now, in this scenario, we have Eric making $120,000 a year. Melanie makes $70,000 a year. And as listeners will recall, the incomes between the parties, they will change child support. So will the amount of overnights or parenting time between the respective parties. So that's not the point of this episode. Instead, we're really going to focus on the work-related daycare. My children at one point were in preschool, and it was like a second mortgage. It is very expensive. It continues to increase the cost of childcare. And if Eric and Melanie, if both Adam and Eve, their hypothetical children, if they go to preschool, or if Eve, the younger one, she goes to preschool, that's going to change the amount of child support. What you can do is the parties can either have this on the worksheet or they can deal with it ad hoc or off of the worksheet. And I'll explain what I mean by that. But we have the child support worksheet up here. It suggests that there is a child support obligation of $307 by Eric paid to Melanie. And there is a zero for the work-related childcare costs. And these are under line item 10A on the child support worksheet. And there's zero there. And so if we put the amount of work-related daycare, and I keep on saying work-related because I'll explain why that matters later on. But if we put $1,000, so let's assume that Eve is $1,000 for work-related daycare. It's a preschool program. And then we go back, it reduces the child support down to $61. And that is because Melanie, in essence, is sharing the cost of preschool for Eve with Eric. Now, that is assuming that Eric is the only one that is paying the work-related daycare. And the alternative is to deal with it off of the worksheet. In this scenario, we go to the percentage share of income, and with Eric making $120,000 and Melanie making $70,000 per year, the share or the split between those is that Eric makes 63% and Melanie makes 37% of their overall combined income. So one option is that Eric goes to the preschool and he pays 63%, or the parties could agree to just a round number of a 60-40 split. So each and every month, he pays 60% of the daycare Eve. Now, parties can agree to a different allocation. There might be another factor, and that could be that they have a disproportionate schedule of parenting times. If Melanie has the children more, that might change the analysis. And if you deal with it on the worksheet, it will take that into consideration. What happens if Eric is the only one that needs work-related daycare. It's still nevertheless going to be counted because his income is counted and he needs help from somebody to take care of Eve. So in order for him to generate that income, there's a couple of things that I'll point out, and that is that you can get into arguments about what counts. Summer camps, the children are in school. Do those count as work-related daycare? And it really depends on how the parties address that. There could be another conflict, and that could be a sleepaway camp. Does that count? We'll get into other issues related to this in an episode on extracurricular activities. You can see on the child support worksheet that there's a subsection E under 10, and that is extraordinary expenses. I've heard it from judges that they just deal with this off the worksheet. So they'll say, Eric and Melanie, you guys agree to divide this 50-50 or 60-40 or 80-20. And those percentages, it depends on the share of income, really. But if you have spousal maintenance, if Eric is paying spousal maintenance, then generally the split is going to be 60-40. But it will change child support. Now, this does not include or address babysitters. And that would be if Eric is remarried or he's out dating and he goes to the movies or goes out to dinner with his new significant other, that having a babysitter during his parenting time is not going to be included because that is not work-related childcare. You also get into these other issues on, for example, an au pair or a nanny, because some of that time is going to be addressed or for personal issues, and some may not. And so there's going to need to be an agreement between the parties on that work-related daycare. Oftentimes, especially with young children, that decision has already been made, but there can be significant variances between the cost of preschool from one preschool to the other. And really, it's going to come down to how the parties are best going to address the work-related daycare. But really, the point of this episode is that it will change how much child support is ordered. And you can either put it on the worksheet or you can take it off. And the rationale behind all of this is that there are general expenses that are paid by people for children. In the previous episode, I talked about food or utilities or driving. Those expenses are baked into the amount of child support. There are significant one-off or line items each and every month. If you compare my children who are not in preschool to Eric and Melanie Wolf's, who would have Eve in preschool, that's a big change in terms of that monthly cost. And the child support worksheet takes that into consideration. So we'll get into other deductions or line items, differences between the normal child support scenario versus another scenario where there could be significant extracurricular expenses or extraordinary medical expenses, and how that can change child support. But until then, thanks for joining us on Divorce at Altitude, and I hope you have found this episode helpful when it comes to work-related daycare and child support in a Colorado divorce.